there was an element of seriousness that was lacking all season long. Penn State got a big ego out of all of this. And I hope people know where I'm going with this because it shows. Okay. The X's and O's are one thing. College football is very emotional. NFL is more business-like because people are paid week to week. I know there's NIL, so we're going towards more of a business-like thing, but these are still young men, kids. Drew Allar is 19 years old, so I'm not surprised that he's overly emotional. But the emotions for Penn State this season were not well managed whatsoever. I don't know that obviously falls on coaching, and James Franklin is a very emotional coach. And I like that. It turns into passion when you do it the right way. When it's not handled the right way, it turns into a lack of self-confidence and big mistakes because you don't trust yourself, you don't believe in yourself, and then those negative emotions overtake you. Or it's like when you get really too angry and then you start causing unnecessary penalties, right? That's how if it manifests itself that way. And I want to compare this to Michigan, but Penn State did not take this season seriously enough. You are going on the road to Columbus. And I know some of these things are out of Penn State's control in terms of the virality, right, of those clips. James Franklin, right, the calling out Michigan, that he says that they play too soft of a schedule. Look, if the shoe fits, Michigan fans, if the shoe fits. But that's not what James Franklin's comment was about. James Franklin's comment was about strategically scheduling opponents that are not going to threaten you because you have a conference schedule that can get you into the college football playoff. And he didn't even name Michigan. Other schools in the Big Ten are doing it too. Okay. Penn State, James Franklin said Penn State is doing it. We are trying to do it because now you don't need to go outside of your conference to bolster your resume. Next year, you got Washington, you got Wisconsin, you got Ohio State, all in the same time frame, back to back to back. 2024 schedule is awful. But as I go off on these tangents, I want to bring you back to the main point. If Penn State had an ego, Penn State was blowing out UMass, West Virginia, shutting out Iowa. It felt like Penn State's Super Bowl this season was Iowa. That should have been more of a business type of thing. Hearing the things that, the coaching staff and the players really taking that one personally. That's fine. I have no problem with that passion against Iowa, returning the favor. But where is that same energy, that business-like energy for the games against Ohio State and Michigan? Because a really good program that didn't have its ego inflated would have had I'm talking no nonsense whatsoever. No viral clips from press conferences, little to no interviews or anything, just being very careful because it felt like, you notice how nothing came out of Ohio State's camp the week of the Penn State Ohio State game. Penn State had all these media distractions. The football team had media distractions. James Franklin's on the Pat McAfee show. There's a reporter that's getting dragged, right? All that stuff. I think about that. Those are distractions, and Penn State didn't handle them, even the slightest thing. Do I think that Penn State, they lost the football game to Ohio State because that happened? No, but it didn't help. It took away from your focus. And then you see things like, don't give anything to Michigan to fuel the fire. Why I bring Michigan in this conversation is because they're highly emotional too, but they channel it very well. Whatever the reason is, they channel it very well. Instead of using the Jim Harbaugh no-show suspension as a distraction, they use it as motivation. And I understand as a brand, as Penn State, but I think back to this clip. And no, this clip is not why Penn State lost. But when Manny Diaz is doing a little bit saying, hey, know the signs and everything else, people saw that viral clip. I thought it was funny. I'm going to post it out because I want to share it with you as a Penn State fan base. But I don't encourage that. I don't. In the biggest game of the season, we're making jokes. Michigan saw that. And what did Blake Corum do? After that what did Blake Corum do when Michigan went up 24-9 against Penn State? He did the sign thing. They see these things. They use them. So these silly distractions, I feel like Penn State got swept up in the moment. They had beaten Iowa, and it felt like there was this return to Camelot. And that was, Why you want to know why the season is not where it is? Because Penn State felt like it finished its checklist. I really can sit here and say that the Nittany Lions, from a subconscious point of view, they had felt like they got one demon, something that was lingering on their shoulder in the Iowa Hawkeyes because they returned the favor of knocking them out of the top 5 back in 2021 and finishing with a 7-6 record. That was one point of revenge, but it feels like subconsciously they were content with that. It was good enough for them. It wasn't good enough because then they would have blocked out all the distractions. It would have been straight line answers to reporters. It wouldn't have been any gimmicks at practice to try to make a point of saying just throw it deep is silly. I hope everyone understands what I'm trying to talk about here. Ohio State didn't have Ryan. Where's Ryan Day's viral press conference? Where's Jim Harbaugh's viral press conference bits? There are none because it's very businesslike. There are no clips. There are no things that are used for bulletin board material from Ohio State and Michigan's camp because they knew how to keep that stuff under wraps. The emotions got the best of Penn State, and that's what I mean. It can negatively manifest itself, and that's what happened. Penn State got too big of an ego by hearing the college football playoff talk from me, right? I was wrong. I'm not afraid to admit that, but I can still say that they were a college football playoff contender. But instead of Penn State embracing it and acting like it, they decided that they were too good for that title, that they were now good enough. Because even though they've only beaten Penn State once, or excuse me, they've only beaten Ohio State once out of the past 10, 11 tries, right? James Franklin is now 1-10 against Ohio State. They felt like, yeah, we can have, instead, they didn't shut everything down. It's business-like, straightforward answers, no joking, no gimmicks, no bits, nothing. Don't give any motivation to the other team. And I'm not saying that is the reason why Penn State lost these games, but it does not help. It does not help. Michigan used all of the negative attention and somehow turned it into motivation and something to continue to win. Penn State did not do that. I felt like they gave too many little things to the opponent. Ohio State completely quiet. You didn't hear anything from the Buckeyes that week. Business, because they have been there. They know what it's like and how to handle the expectations of being a college football playoff contender. This Penn State team did not, and I hope that they can learn from it and go into it next season when everyone's older. I feel like just by a logical conclusion that Penn State now understands what it's like to handle the pressure and the emotion of actually being in the college football playoff conversation at the beginning of the season. Now they can take that and move forward with it next year when Drew Allar's in his 3rd year of college football. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Tyler Warren's back. Hopefully Keandre Lambert-Smith, Dante Cephas, Trey Wallace. Look how deep this offense can be. All those guys who have talent with another year of experience and another offseason to work together and to gel. Coordinators changing and all that stuff. We don't know what this roster is going to ultimately look like, but you get my point. They now have had that experience of understanding the pressure and the expectations. Logically, you hope that they adapt with it, but I can't sit here a year later right now, a year in advance, to try to make that prediction. But that's my assumption that logically they should be able to handle it better because this time they were not prepared for those expectations. They really weren't. Young quarterback, first time being in the college football playoff conversation legitimately. It wasn't just the local media, the national media, ESPN, CBS, NBC, all thought that Penn State was a legitimate contender and had an outside shot of making the top 4 and could upend the Big Ten Conference. And they didn't do it. And that's what we learned today. And that's the biggest mistake of them all, really. That's the biggest mistake of them all from this Penn State versus Michigan game.